Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope it's great and fantastic. Everything here is wonderful. And I read another book. I finished another book this week. And so today we're going to talk about Mistborn's Secret History. It's a novella set in the Mistborn universe by Brandon Sanderson. And I was really excited when I found out this book existed. I had just read a couple of weeks ago Alloy of Law, which is the fourth book, I guess, in the Mistborn universe world. I don't really know how to explain it unless you've read the Mistborn stuff. It is that book and then the three books that are preceding that, the Wax and Wane series, are kind of an interlude. Brandon has said that he wants to write three trilogies in the Mistborn world covering three different eras, and the Wax and Wane books, the Alloy of Law and the three that are following that, are outside of those original three trilogies. But in order to tell the original three trilogies, the story contained in this book kind of explains the future. So, if you don't want spoilers for future books, and obviously if you don't want spoilers about this book, I would say don't watch this video and then don't read this book, because this book does spoil the future of the Mistborn series a tiny bit, a tiny bit. If you've read the Alloy of Law stuff, then you already kind of know, or you maybe have assumed the spoiler that's in this book. But, yeah. The other thing is I'm going to be talking about this book in depth, so this video is going to contain a lot of spoilers, but, again, if you've read the Mistborn Trilogy and you read into Brandon's hints in those books, you kind of already know the story that's in here. The difference is now that we get to see what happens through the eyes of the characters that this story embodies. So here's the major spoiler alert warning. This book is about Kelsier after he dies. In fact, the opening of this book is the death of Kelsier. So, if you picked up on it when reading the Mistborn series, it seemed like Kelsier was still around after he died. And he was. He literally, quite literally, was around after he died. And this book tells that story of what Kelsier was doing after his death and before Sazed ascended to be, ruin and preservation. And it takes you into a few of the scenes from the Mistborn Trilogy that you think Kelsier was there, and you get to kind of see whether he actually was or not. Because, surprise, surprise, in a lot of those scenes, which we learned in the original Mistborn Trilogy, the being that was presenting itself as Kelsier to his crew was actually Ruin, imitating Kelsier. But in some instances, Kelsier was there. Kelsier was a voice in some of these characters' ears. Kelsier was actively fighting back. And so the book opens with Kelsier's death. He ascends to what's called the cognitive realm, and he meets God, or what he thinks is God. It's actually Preservation. He meets Preservation, who tells him that this is the place between worlds, and that he needs to go off into the distance. Kelsier sees some other people dying, and they all kind of get sucked away to infinity. He says it kind of draws a line, and they get pulled off into the beyond, with a capital B. Kelsier, obviously being Kelsier, is like, I don't accept death, I don't want to do this, how do I get out of this? And Preservation tells him you can't, like, you're going. And Kelsier's like, well, why am I being sucked away? And Preservation tells him, because you're Mistborn and it takes a little while longer because you're so attached. And so Kelsier figures out that he can stay in this world if he makes it to the Well of Ascension. He can kind of strengthen his bond to Preservation, which will help him stay in this between world. And eventually, Preservation says, yeah, you can. And so he ends up going and being thrown into the well. He ends up in the Well of Ascension, and it becomes his prison. And so a lot of the scenes that we see, especially when Vin and Elend go to the Well of Ascension, Kelsier was there. Kelsier was the driving force behind Elend getting, gutted. And Kelsier was, at that point, released into the world. And, we get to meet... We get to meet Hoid in this book. Hoid is a character that exists outside of everything that we know is possible in the Cosmere. He's in the Stormlight Archive, he's in this, he's in the standalone books that Brandon has written. He is a character that Brandon describes as it's complex, is what Brandon says about Hoid. but he's in this, and he appears to Kelsier. We get to see some characters that are from another standalone book that seem to have a vast knowledge of the Cosmere and what's going on, and have been able to world hop, and they are also in the cognitive realm, and they are trying to seize preservation's power. And ultimately, Kelsier uses that to his advantage, and you know, the real story in this is him robbing those people and using that power to try to do some good. And we get to see how he influenced the final scenes of the Mistborn Trilogy, and it's actually pretty good. It was a bit difficult to read just simply because the story is super disjointed, right? It's jumping through time and space, literally time and space, and as Kelsier tells the story in here, it's to a quote god, time doesn't really flow. It just kind of moves as the god wills it to, and so there are lapses where he's running, but it takes months to get somewhere, and we don't really get to see what's happening in the physical realm. If he wants to see what's going on in the physical realm as this spirit, he has to kind of touch spots, and he can see what's happening in that spot. But unless he's there, it's kind of a misty, foggy, you know, almost like it almost reminds me of the Upside Down in Stranger Things, kind of like a vague shadow of the real world. So it's a little bit disjointed. The writing is Brandon's normal. Actually, the writing in this is a little bit more complex. It's a little bit more poetic than Brandon's normal writing, which I found very interesting. But because it's a novella, because he packed this story into a tiny book, his thoughts are very, very just pinprick concise. Like, get it out and move on. Get it out and move on. Chapters in this book are like a page and a half sometimes, because it's just a quick little dot on the story and let's move on. And so there's not a lot of explanation of what's going on. It very much leans on you kind of knowing the Mistborn story. I don't think you could pick this up having known nothing and read this. It would make no sense. It would be completely nonsensical. It requires you to have knowledge of all three Mistborn books of the original trilogy in order to understand what's going on in here. So as a standalone book, not useful at all. As a companion to the original trilogy, I think it's a really fun book to read because it really lets you peek behind the curtain and see, you know, the inner workings of the Cosmere and the inner workings or the inner thoughts between ruin and preservation and what was actually happening on that side. So it's fun. This is a hardback edition that is not available in the US. I will put a link to Amazon to a version that is available in the US. It's only available through a collection of Cosmere stories that this is in. I got this from a UK seller on Amazon. As soon as I found out it was a thing, I went and looked and discovered that this was a hardbound that was available in the UK, and I ordered it immediately. I don't necessarily think I'll order the hardbound, the collection that goes with the Stormlight stuff, but I have heard that Brandon is planning on releasing this in the US as a hardbound, probably directly through his store. So keep an eye out for it. Mistborn: A Secret History. I think it's definitely worth reading if you're a fan of Mistborn. If you are just a fan of Brandon in general and you're not really die hard into Mistborn, this is probably a skip. This is really, really important. This is only really important to people who wanted more Kelsier after the original trilogy. Otherwise, truthfully, I think unless you're a big fan of Kelsier, I don't really know that you're going to get a whole lot out of this. It's kind of an odd story, let's put it that way. But I think it's one worth reading. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you found that interesting. If you do read the book and you want to talk about it, or you want to talk about other Mistborn stuff in general, comments down below. I love hearing from you. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. No, I won't. I'll see you on Monday. Today's word you should know to sound smart is expropriate. It is a verb meaning to seize property or wealth from its owner for the public's use or benefit, as when the state takes someone's home under eminent domain to build a road through it. The Bradfords are still reeling from the fact that the state expropriated a portion of their formal gardens for a new highway. Expropriate. E-X-P-R-O-P-R-I-A-T-E. We actually had that happen here in Fairmont we have a downtown that is completely dead to the world. There's nothing, there's no reason to ever go down there. But our former governor decided that we should have a new highway going into downtown Fairmont. So he expropriated hundreds of homes along that stretch and built a new kind of exit ramp down into downtown Fairmont. And it has done nothing.